this chart. We're talking about the price to earnings. All right. So this chart is literally the T-share, the payout per T-share inverted. Literally. That's all that this line is. Okay. Now let me show you. We're going to take this value and put a 1 over it. And it should be that number, right? I just told you it's the same thing.
1 over 5.84.
Boom. Okay. So we get that. That's all that we're looking at here. 1 over the payout per T-share. And we're going to go into why this is the number that makes sense for HEX, right? And the confusion that we're seeing on Twitter is that people think that the yield is the same thing, just like this clown thought the yield was the same thing yesterday. And I understand why that could be confusing if you don't actually understand what this number is saying. So we're going to go over the exact definition and how Wall Street looks at this number so people can get an understanding, because I thought I was doing a good job of explaining it, but clearly not. So let's rectify that issue for the community and, let everybody understand how they're going to be rich as fuck, because that's what it's about, right? It's not about anything else, at least not for me. Right. Because I really want people to understand that the best move is delaying gratification, because it really is. Even if it's for 6 months, right? You got to give the system time to do the work for you, because you could get so much HEX and it can perform so well that it's in your best interest to actually just do that, right? And this chart is going to tell us why, right? And this is all that this chart is doing. So let's get to it. So price to earnings, right? Very straightforward. Price to earnings ratio is the ratio for valuing a company that measures its current share price, okay? Current stock price, it's another word for that, to its earnings per share. Now, the price to earnings per share ratio is also known as the price multiple or the earnings multiple. Now, that's important, because this lets us know that we're not actually calculating anything tangible, right? Which is critical to understand. This number is a multiple of some sort, letting us know that we're paying a multiple of something, right? But what is that thing? Well, in this case, that thing is earnings per share. Now, what are earnings per share? Well, in plain English, they're just an accounting number. That is all. They're not a tangible representation of anything any entity is actually doing, right? And this is why, it's important to understand that, because it gets confusing if you don't, right? Because you're then confusing the earnings, right, with the yield, right? Earnings per share is an intangible value that is only produced on accounting books. That is it. By GAAP accounting rules. It's not a real number at all. That is not real. That's just something on paper. People need to understand that.
Yeah, so the E in this formula is basically a made-up number by accounting.
Correct. That's it.
Yes.
That is all. It's just made up number by the GAAP accounting rules that we have to subject ourselves to based on the system. And that's it.
And that's not the same as yield.
Correct. The yield is something that the system is actually generating. It's tangible because we can account for it, right? And we know those numbers for HEX, right? For 1 year, it's like 11%, 12%, right? Because we see every day what it's printing. So we can annualize that, right? Simple.
Yes.
And that's the difference, right? You got earnings per share, and we're going to get to earnings per share. So let's just keep reading. Price to earnings ratios are used by investors and analysts to determine the relative value of a company's shares in an apples to apples comparison. So what I'm doing as an analyst is helping you understand the true value in HEX by helping you see how cheap it is, right? 17% versus the all-time low of 5.51 for the S&P 500 earnings ratio. Price to earnings ratio, like, I mean, 17%, 551%.
Yep. Crazy.
17%, 551.
Mhm.
And like truthfully, if you've ever used HEX, you should know that, because I mean, if you hold any stock, right, you know that like how much you make versus how
The
much you
price.
make in HEX, it's not even comparable. So
No,
like,
it's not.
especially if you care about like being paid per unit of measurement, like there's no game like HEX.
Correct. There isn't.
Let's continue with the formula.
Right. So let's go back to the formula or to the definition.
Yeah.
So what I'm showing you then again is how cheap HEX is versus everything else that's ever existed. Simple. That's what I'm showing you with that chart, right? So this is what this paragraph just said. Now, price to earnings may be estimated on a trailing, backward looking, or forward projected basis. Now we're going to get into earnings per share and how that number is being reflected on the actual valuation of a stock when we're looking at it, right? This is now what we're going to get to. So price to earnings, right, also relates to a company's share price, right? It's to its earnings per share. Now, again, it's important to remember the earnings per share is an intangible value. It's not something you're actually holding in your hand ever, right? The payout per T share actually is something tangible, and the system is producing it daily, and it's acting in accordance with that. And that's what the PE ratio is showing us for HEX. This is why it doubles so much. And we're going to get to that. Like, this is all part of the explanation, interestingly enough. So let's see here. Higher PE ratio could mean the company's stock is overvalued, or else that investors are expecting high growth rates in the future. Well, it's never really the latter. I'll tell you guys that much. Companies that have no earnings or that are losing money do not have, obviously, because they have no earnings to put down in the books. Two kinds of PE ratios, forward and trailing. We're going to get to that right now. Let's see here. So this is the formula, right? And this is what gets people confused.
Yeah.
Because people know there's a price for a stock, but they're like, how the hell are you looking at it 1 over HEX? That makes or 1 over the payout per T share. That makes no sense. And it's actually simple, right? Because people aren't taking into account that we're looking at a systemic valuation. So we're looking at the value of the system itself, not the price of the system in dollar terms. We don't care about that. We want to understand what the system is actually doing. Right?
Yeah.
And the system is actually producing value at this rate constantly, which is 17%. Right? 17% of what though? And that's what we're trying to get to. What does that 17% mean? And this is what's confusing for a lot of people, because a lot of people think that the 17% is some type of return or something, and it's not. It's merely a measure across time. And we're going to get to that. So we got the market value per share. Right. Now, what's the market value of a crypto per crypto?
It's just the coin price.
Yeah, it's just itself. It's one.
Well, yeah, the coin, yeah.
It's one. Right. When you're talking about Bitcoin, what are you talking about? Bitcoin. When
Yeah,
you're talking about
one
ETH.
Bitcoin.
What are you talking about? ETH. Not talking about anything else. So this is why we look at it 1 over the payout per T share. Because we actually have something tangible that we can use as a metric for measurement in terms of velocity, right? Because that's what the price of earnings is measuring. How quickly you actually get your money back. And we're going to see this in the definition in a second.
So we're not looking at the value of the yield, but we're looking at the value of the entire system.
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And the price to earnings chart is explaining to me very clearly why no business effort I ever started in my life has worked out to date.
Correct.
Basically. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean,
Makes
you hear this from OGs all the time. You know, how HEX has literally eclipsed their whole life endeavor.
Right.
Yeah.
Simple. Because it's just math, man. And it's designed to work well when you understand what's going on.
Ashanti and live chat.
And even the businesses that work, I mean, the
Yeah.
amount of inflated that you're paying to get that earnings, you know, is just, it's so stupid, right?
It was
like what the average stock trades at for, you know, like how much you're paying. It's crazy.
It was a joke that I had running with Blaze. Like we at some point had a conversation and we were talking about different business ideas or just business opportunities. And then at some point we just started to ask ourselves, but will it 100x? If the earnings won't 100x, then it's not worth doing it. You could just better just sit on your ass and buy
you know,
HEX.
there's jobs that you can do, there's businesses that you can do in things that you enjoy, and then you can always exactly. I mean, knowing what we know, you can invest the money that you bring in into crypto and 100x that.
Hobby.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's a fun hobby, and it's just a way to keep buying, you know.
Yeah, I was going to interject earlier. I was going to say one of our frequent commenters in live chat, if I remember correctly, it was Ashanti, and she pointed out, you know, T-shares are like having employees, you know, in a business, and it's true. It's true. Like somebody, like a big earner, they're working for your business. That's what a T-share is.
It's kind of like being a mafioso and like going to like having a bunch of people that work at a job, and it's like, yo, time to pay up because they're doing all the work, and you're just collecting. You're just like, yo, pay up or I break your legs.
I understand very clearly now. I understand.
T-shirts don't have legs, man.
Thanks for the super sticker, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, mine don't because I already broke them.
Yeah, right.
I said pay
right.
up.
That's a good sticker.
Yeah,
all right.
Right.
What did you pull up?
So what
500.
I pulled up is the current S&P 500 ratio. So presently,
PE ratio,
yeah, presently, if you buy the S&P 500 ETF, you can expect to get your money back in 29 years. Congratulations, you're a moron. Now, how is this true? We're gonna get there because we haven't finished. So to determine, you're getting the market value per share. Right now, we understand why I'm using one HEX and not some random value. Right? It's because we're looking at that one crypto. That's it. Simple. And we're taking the payout per T-share on a daily basis and prescribing a rate to it. Now, here's something you got to understand. Let's clear this out. We know the payout per T-share on average is 5.8 HEX, right? 5.7, whatever. Who cares? Whatever the number is.
Yeah.
Take that, multiply by a year, you get 2,117 HEX. This is your total accrued payout per year, right? This isn't specific to the system because the system is always working. Does that make sense? So why does it make sense to look at it this way when in reality it's doing this every day? Not every year. It's doing it every day. And you need to understand that. That's how critical it is, right? Because if you're dividing this number, let me see if I can invert it. Come on. Okay, it doesn't want to work. So let's take 1 divided by 217. The fuck is this telling you? It's not telling you shit. That's basically the grandeur of a daily payout, right? It's not even the entire thing. It's a piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not getting any information from this, right? And that's the annual payout. Because if you're looking at this correctly, it's 1 over some number. It's not you're not taking this HEX number, this number of HEX accrued over the year and dividing it by 5.8. That's wrong. Because that's a daily metric. And what we're trying to ascertain from this is, again, right? What is an analyst trying to tell you? Determine the relative value of owning this thing versus something else. That's what this ratio is telling you. Right? Again, the relative value. And we're looking at it here. 17% right now. Versus an all-time low of 5.51 times. versus a present value of 28.96, aka 29 times